Aquarius, there is a very specific kind of pain the stars don't talk about enough. It's not heartbreak. It's not loss. It's the moment you realize you didn't lose them, you lost yourself while loving them. You gave patience, you gave understanding, you gave silence when you should have spoken, and love when you were already empty. And one day, without drama, without tears, your soul whispered something terrifyingly clear: I gave everything, and it was still not enough. If this feels uncomfortably familiar, leave a comment below and type "I feel this." You're not here by accident. Because what happens next for Aquarius isn't about walking away, it's about the exact moment you stop abandoning yourself and everything quietly begins to change. There is a quiet shift that happens inside you, Aquarius. It doesn't announce itself. No dramatic goodbye. No breaking point anyone else can see. It's subtle, almost gentle. One day, you wake up and notice that your body keeps going, but your heart no longer follows. You're still showing up, still listening, still being kind. But something inside you feels distant, as if your spirit stepped a few feet back just to breathe. That's when it becomes clear this isn't sadness. It's not even disappointment, it's depletion. The kind that builds slowly when you've been strong for too long. When you've been understanding without being understood. When you've been the calm one while quietly carrying everyone else's storms. Aquarius, you didn't miss the signs. You noticed them all. You noticed how your words softened so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. How your needs became negotiable. How rest started to feel like guilt. And still you kept going. Not because you were weak, but because loyalty runs deep in you. Because once you give your heart, you don't know how to give halfway. But let me ask you something gently. When was the last time someone asked how much you had left before taking more? There's a particular exhaustion that comes from being emotionally responsible for spaces you didn't create. From holding things together that were never meant to be carried by one soul. At some point, your nervous system stops protesting and simply goes quiet. That's the moment most people misunderstand. They think you stopped caring. They think you became distant. They think you changed. What they don't see is that you were conserving what remained. Because something in you knew if you kept giving at the same pace, there would be nothing left to come back to. This is where Aquarius energy is often misread. You're not cold, you're discerning. You don't detach because you don't feel. You detach because you feel everything and you finally learn the cost. There's a strange mix of grief and relief here. Grief for how much you poured in. Relief for the honesty rising in your chest. It sounds like a whisper at first. I can't do this anymore. Not angrily, not bitterly, just truth. And truth, even when it's quiet, changes everything. Did you notice how once you admitted that to yourself, your breath felt different? How the weight in your chest shifted even slightly? That's not giving up. That's your inner compass recalibrating. This moment, the one where you realize you're empty, is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a different kind of strength. The kind that doesn't prove, doesn't rescue, doesn't disappear to be loved. And as we stay here together for a moment, I want you to consider this. If your exhaustion could speak without fear, what would it ask you to protect next? Just sit with that. Because what unfolds from here isn't about loss. It's about what finally has space to return to you. There is a quiet truth that settles in after exhaustion. Not sharp, not dramatic, just steady. And once it lands, it cannot be unseen. Aquarius, what you asked for was never excess. It was not some unreachable ideal. It was the simple wish to feel safe when you opened your heart. To trust that words would match actions. To know that when you reached out, someone would reach back. You carry a mind that lives ahead of its time. You see patterns others miss. You sense emotional weather before the storm ever arrives. And because of that, you often adjust. You soften your needs. You explain yourself twice, sometimes 3 times, not because you doubt yourself, but because you hope clarity will create connection. There is a deep misconception about strength. Many believe strong people do not need reassurance. That independence means silence. That emotional maturity looks like never asking. But that idea was never meant for you. Wanting consistency is not asking for control. Wanting respect is not asking for perfection. Wanting emotional safety is not asking someone to lose themselves. These are not luxuries. They are foundations. The kind that allow love to stand without collapsing under pressure. Somewhere along the way, you were taught to label your needs as heavy, too much, too sensitive, too intense. So you began to ration yourself. You learned how to survive on fragments of attention, on half answers, on affection that arrived late or left early. And here is the quiet part most people miss. You stayed longer than you should have, not because you were weak, but because you believed in potential. You believed that if you held space long enough, things would stabilize. That if you remained patient, the emotional ground would stop shifting beneath you. But patience cannot replace presence. Hope cannot replace effort, and love cannot grow where safety is inconsistent. At some point, something inside you recalibrated. Not in anger. In clarity. You realized that surviving on crumbs was slowly disconnecting you from yourself, and that is when leaving stopped feeling like loss. It started to feel like self-respect. This is the difference few talk about. Neediness pulls from fear. Basic emotional needs rise from self-awareness. One demands to fill a void. The other simply asks for a stable place to stand. Aquarius, your requests were never about asking someone to save you. They were about asking someone to meet you. At eye level. With honesty. With consistency that did not require reminders. And here is a question worth sitting with tonight. What if the reason things felt heavy was not because you asked too much, but because you were carrying the relationship alone for too long? There is relief in this realization, because it means you do not need to become smaller. You do not need to harden your heart. You do not need to silence your inner truth. You are allowed to want steadiness. You are allowed to need emotional clarity. You are allowed to choose environments where your nervous system can rest. This is not you becoming distant. This is you becoming aligned. And alignment, for an Aquarius, is where healing quietly begins. There is a subtle shift that happens when you finally grow quiet. Not cold, not closed, just still. And in that stillness, Aquarius, something revealing takes place. The noise around you changes. The people who barely noticed your effort begin to feel uneasy. Not because they suddenly understand your heart, but because the system they leaned on has gone offline. Some souls do not recognize love while it is being given. They recognize it only when it is no longer available. While you were present adapting, smoothing edges, holding emotional space, your energy felt endless to them. Reliable. Predictable. Almost invisible. You were not seen as a person with limits. You were experienced as a resource. A steady current that kept things moving without requiring accountability. This is a quiet psychological pattern, one many adults never examine. When someone becomes accustomed to being emotionally carried, they stop developing the muscles to stand on their own. Dependence disguises itself as comfort. And comfort, when uninterrupted, slowly erases appreciation. Aquarius, your giving nature is unique. You give without keeping score. You give from vision, not obligation. You offer understanding because you genuinely see people beneath their behavior. But when that generosity flows without pause, others begin to confuse access with entitlement. They did not ask how you were holding up. They did not check the weight you were carrying. Because things were working. And for many, working is all that matters until it stops. The moment you step back, the imbalance became visible, not to you. To them, silence entered the space where your effort used to live. Tasks felt heavier. Emotions surfaced without your calming presence to soften them. And that is when panic arrived, not the panic of loss, but the panic of disruption. This is an uncomfortable truth. Some people do not miss you. They miss who you were for them. And realizing this can sting. It challenges the idea that love is always mutual. But it also brings clarity that is deeply liberating. Because it shows you something essential. Your value was never created by how much you gave. It was revealed by what happened when you stopped. Healthy connection does not collapse when one person rests. It adjusts. It communicates. It meets in the middle. When everything falls apart the moment you step away, that is not devotion. That is dependency. And Aquarius, you were never meant to be a life support system. You were meant to be a companion, an equal presence, a shared orbit, not the gravitational center holding everything together. Here is a question worth letting echo for a moment. If your absence caused panic, was it really love they felt, or fear of having to face themselves without your energy buffering the truth? There is nothing cruel about choosing to stop overgiving. There is nothing selfish about letting others feel the consequences of imbalance. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is remove the support that keeps someone from growing. As you listen to this, allow your chest to soften. You did not fail. You did not abandon. You simply stopped sacrificing yourself to keep others comfortable. And in that pause, a deeper truth begins to form. One that does not rush. One that waits for relationships able to stand on mutual presence, not borrowed strength. This is where your energy begins to return. Quietly, naturally. And with it, a clearer sense of what you will no longer give away just to be valued. There is a different kind of sound that arrives after you have made peace. It is not loud. It does not rush. It feels almost like air returning to a room that has been closed for too long. And that is usually when the messages begin. The tone is softer now, careful, measured. Words chosen with a tenderness they did not use when your heart was still open. They want to talk. They want to explain what they could not explain before. They want to name feelings they avoided while you were still waiting. And Aquarius, this moment can feel strangely confusing. Because part of you recognizes the sincerity, and another part feels nothing at all. That numbness is not cruelty. It is completion. Some apologies arrive after the lesson has already been learned. After your nervous system has stopped bracing. After your body no longer expects disappointment from the same direction. An apology cannot take root in soil that has already grown something else. And what you grew, quietly, was clarity. You see, healing changes the ears. When you are still hurting, words feel powerful. They promise relief. They offer hope. But when you have already sat with the truth alone, when you have grieved without witnesses, when you have rebuilt your inner world without reassurance, words arrive differently. They no longer save you. They simply inform you. This is something many adults struggle to understand. They believe timing is flexible, that remorse has no expiration date. But emotional reality does not work that way. Connection requires presence, not hindsight. When someone apologizes only after consequences appear, it raises a quiet question. Were they sorry for the pain or sorry for the loss of access? And it is okay if you do not rush to answer that. Aquarius, you are allowed to honor what arrived too late. You are also allowed to leave it where it is. Closure is not always a conversation. Sometimes it is the moment you realize you no longer need someone else to confirm what you already know. You already faced the truth without their help. You already named your experience without correction. You already chose yourself without applause. That is not bitterness. That is maturity. And here is the part that often goes unspoken. Accepting an apology is not the same as reopening a door. Forgiveness does not require re-entry. Understanding does not demand continuation. You can hear someone, you can even feel compassion, and still choose not to return. That choice is not punishment. It is alignment. So if their words arrive now, landing softly but without impact, do not question your heart. It has simply moved to a different frequency. Let this be a gentle reminder. Healing does not always look like reconciliation. Sometimes it looks like peace that no longer needs agreement. And before the next breath settles, consider this quietly. If your life feels lighter without explaining yourself, what does that tell you about where your energy belongs now? Stay here for a moment. There is still more unfolding ahead. There is a quiet kind of loneliness that does not come from being alone. It comes from standing at a decision point no one else can see. From the outside, life looks normal. You show up, you function, you smile when required. But inside there is a pause, a long inhale, a question you keep circling without language. Leaving was not a sudden act for you. It was a slow internal negotiation. One that happened late at night, in the shower, on long drives where the radio stayed off. You replayed memories not because you missed them, but because you needed proof. Proof that you had tried. Proof that you were not abandoning something meaningful too easily. Aquarius, this is the part people never witness. The season where you doubt yourself more than anyone ever doubted you. The moment where you ask, quietly, am I asking too much of life or too little of myself? Starting over is not romantic when you are grown. It is heavy. It comes with logistics, history, habits, shared timelines. It means accepting uncertainty without the excitement of youth to soften it. And still, you stood there. You considered staying. Not because it felt right, but because it felt familiar. Familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar freedom. Especially for someone who has learned how to survive by adapting. You told yourself stories. Maybe it will change. Maybe I can adjust. Maybe this is just how things are now. But beneath those thoughts, there was another truth rising. Quieter. Steadier. Staying would require you to disappear in small ways every day. To compromise your inner voice. To make peace with a version of yourself that felt smaller than who you knew you were becoming. That is a cost most people do not calculate. But you did. Aquarius energy is future-oriented. You feel time differently. You sense where a path leads long before the scenery changes. So when you chose to leave, it was not an impulsive escape. It was an act of long-range self-respect. Choosing yourself did not feel triumphant at first. It felt terrifying, quiet, almost anticlimactic. There were no fireworks, just a deep, trembling breath and the understanding that you would have to carry yourself forward without guarantees. But here is what matters. You did not leave because you stopped loving. You left because you finally loved yourself enough to stop negotiating your worth. And that choice, even if no one applauded it, shifted your entire timeline. Many people stay too long because they are afraid of regret. Few realize the deeper regret is staying and slowly forgetting who you are. Let me ask you something gently. When you imagine the version of you 5 years from now, which path lets them breathe easier? Hold that question without forcing an answer. Some truths reveal themselves only when the noise fades. You did not lose something by choosing yourself. You preserved something. And what you protected in that moment is what will guide everything that comes next. Stay with me. The road ahead is quieter, but it is also far more honest. There is a softer strength that arrives after you stop fighting yourself. It does not announce itself. It settles in quietly, like light through a window you finally opened. This is where you are now. You are not angry anymore, not even disappointed in the way you once were. There is simply a calm knowing inside you that says, I understand what happened, and I understand myself. Forgiveness came to you naturally, not because you were pressured into it, but because you did not want to carry bitterness forward. You are an Aquarius. Your spirit is built to move ahead, not to stay entangled in what has already taught its lesson. But here is the part that feels unfamiliar to others. Your forgiveness did not come with an invitation. You can wish someone well without reopening your life. You can release resentment without reopening wounds. This is not coldness. This is discernment. There was a time when you confused kindness with availability. When empathy quietly asked you to stay longer than you should, you believed understanding meant endurance. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. You began to notice how often compassion asked you to shrink, how often love required you to abandon your own needs, how often your openness was mistaken for permission, and you stopped. Not with drama, not with anger, but with clarity. Saying no did not feel harsh this time, it felt honest, like finally placing a boundary where your soul could rest. Forgiveness, for you, became internal, a private act of healing, not a bridge back to what once drained you. This is a lesson many people learn late, if at all. That access to you is not guaranteed by remorse. That presence is not owed simply because history exists. You learn that love without self-respect becomes self-abandonment, and compassion without limits becomes self-betrayal. So you chose a different way. You chose to let go without returning, to understand without re-engaging, to wish peace without offering proximity. That choice does not make you unkind. It makes you whole. There is a quiet confidence in you now, one that does not need to explain itself. You no longer argue with your intuition. You listen. And the more you honor that inner voice, the less guilt you feel for protecting your energy. Let me ask you something, just between us. When was the last time you said no and felt relief instead of fear? That feeling is not selfishness. It is alignment. You are no longer here to be everything for everyone. You are here to be true to yourself. And that truth requires boundaries that others may not understand. But understanding is not a requirement for your peace. So if you forgive and still walk away, know this. You did not fail love. You simply chose a love that includes you. Stay with this feeling for a moment. There is a different kind of life forming now, one built on mutual presence, not sacrifice. And what comes next will meet you where you stand, not where you used to disappear. There is a noticeable shift in the way your days begin now. Not dramatic, not loud. You wake up without that familiar tightness in your chest. The urge to check, to fix, to reach out before anyone misses you is gone. In its place, there is space. Your energy no longer moves outward in search of validation. It settles inward first. And that changes everything. You no longer feel the need to prove that you are kind, or loyal, or worth staying for. Those truths live quietly inside you now, without performance. As an Aquarius, you have always understood the future before others could see it. But for a long time, you tried to bring people with you who were not ready to walk beside you. You slowed down for them. You translated yourself. You explained your heart until it felt thin. That phase has ended. Now, when someone meets you, they meet you as you are. Not as someone auditioning for love. Not as someone asking to be chosen. But as someone already standing in their own life. You notice it in small moments. Conversations feel lighter. Silences feel comfortable. You no longer feel responsible for carrying the emotional weight of every room you enter. You give, but you no longer pour from yourself. You share, but you do not disappear. There is a rhythm to your life now that feels sustainable. The people around you sense it too. They meet you where you stand, not because you demanded it, but because you stopped accepting less. This is not isolation. This is alignment. Peace does not feel empty the way loneliness once did. It feels full, grounded, intentional. You spend more time listening to your body, more time honoring your intuition without debate. You rest without guilt. You enjoy without explanation. And perhaps the most surprising part is how natural it all feels. This life you are building does not require constant effort. It does not ask you to be smaller or louder or more accommodating. It simply asks you to be present. There is a maturity in this season that suits you, a quiet confidence that does not need to announce itself. You trust your timing now, you trust your decisions. You are no longer chasing connections that feel almost right. You are allowing space for those that feel honest, mutual, steady. Let me ask you something gently. When was the last time you felt at ease being exactly who you are without adjusting to be understood? That ease is not accidental. It is the result of every boundary you honored. Every time you chose rest over proving. Every moment you decided your worth did not need negotiation. This version of life may look simple from the outside, but it is built on deep internal work, on self-respect, on clarity earned the hard way. And as you continue forward, you will notice that what finds you now is different. It arrives without pressure, without confusion, without the need for you to earn your place. You are not waiting anymore. You are living. Stay here for a moment. There is one final truth still unfolding, and it carries a lightness you have not felt in a long time. There is a quiet clarity that arrives at the very end of a long emotional journey. Not sharp, not dramatic, just steady. It feels like standing under an open sky after years of holding your breath indoors. This is where the truth finally settles. You were never too much, and you were never lacking. What you offered was real. Depth, presence, consistency that did not flicker when things became uncomfortable. But not everyone has the capacity to receive that kind of energy. Some people admire light only from a distance. They do not know how to live inside it. Aquarius, you spent too long wondering what you could adjust, how you could soften yourself, how you could become easier to hold. And slowly, without realizing it, you began to fold parts of yourself inward. Not because you wanted to, but because you believed love required it. Here is the final truth. The problem was never your intensity. It was never your honesty. It was never your emotional intelligence or your vision. The space simply was not built to hold you. When you stopped shrinking, the world did not collapse. It expanded. You noticed opportunities that once felt blocked. Connections that once felt heavy quietly fell away. Your intuition grew louder, not out of fear, but confidence. This is what happens when an Aquarius finally stands at their full height. Life reorganizes itself. You no longer chase meaning, meaning meets you. You no longer question whether you are asking for too much. You understand that asking for less would cost you your soul. There is a maturity in this realization that only comes after loss, after disappointment, after choosing yourself even when it felt lonely. And now, something softer begins to grow. Trust. Not the kind you place blindly in others, but the kind you place in yourself. You trust your timing. You trust your instincts. You trust that walking away was not a failure, but a redirection. Let me ask you one final question, quietly. What becomes possible when you stop trying to fit and start allowing yourself to belong exactly as you are? This chapter is not about proving anything anymore. It is about living. Living without guilt, without self-explanation, without apologizing for your depth. You are allowed to want more because you are capable of giving more. To yourself first. As this story settles, let it do so gently. You do not need to rush forward. You do not need to look back. Just stand here for a moment, in the fullness of who you are now. This is not an ending. It is a return to your truth, to your energy, to the version of you that no longer needs permission to exist. Trust what is unfolding. Trust the quiet. Trust yourself. And this time, Aquarius, choose yourself without hesitation. Without guilt. You were always enough. Take a slow breath with me here. Let it settle all the way down. If you stayed until this moment, it is not by accident. Something in you recognized itself along the way, not loudly, but clearly. Aquarius, this journey was never about fixing you. It was about remembering who you were before you started doubting your own depth, before you learned to shrink, before you confused endurance with love. Tonight, let this truth rest gently in your chest. You did not lose anything by choosing yourself. You reclaimed your future. There is a quiet strength in you now, one that does not rush, one that does not prove, one that trusts timing instead of forcing outcomes. And as the energy shifts around you, as old doors stay closed and new ones begin to appear, know this. You are not behind. You are right on time. The universe does not rush Aquarius souls. It prepares them. So if this message touched you, even softly, leave a word in the comments. Just one word that describes how you feel right now. You never know who else might need to see it and feel less alone. If this space feels safe, if these messages speak to the part of you that has grown quieter but wiser, stay with us. Subscribe. This is a place for those who have loved deeply, lost honestly, and are ready to live with clarity. More messages are coming. Deeper ones. Ones that meet you exactly where you are becoming. Until then, trust yourself. Trust what you released. Trust what is finding you now. This chapter is not closing, it is opening. And wherever you are listening from tonight, know that you are seen, you are supported, and you are never too much for the life that is meant for you. Stay gentle with yourself. The journey continues.